And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Jasmine, who during her near-death experience saw the light and encountered a being telling her to fight harder because her story wasn't over. Jasmine, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you, Jasmine. And if you don't mind, let's start on the day that this happened and go from there.
Yeah, this was back in 2016. I had been honestly repeating a pretty toxic cycle in my life of people pleasing and allowing people in my life that just really didn't deserve my energy. And I was actually, interestingly enough, on my way to a first date, but I wanted to stop at home really quickly to change my clothes. And I was about to turn onto my own street. And I could swear like a million times over that I saw nobody coming in the oncoming traffic right before I was about to turn onto my street. But somehow there was, and we collided. And as the collision happened, I didn't even feel it. What I felt was myself lift out of my body. And I accepted with full certainty that this was how I died. And as I was accepting this, there was just this level of peace that came over my body. Oh, wait, no, I forgot a very important part of the story. I'm gonna go back a little bit. So as I was turning onto my street, I had happened to be listening to 21 Pilots' House of Gold. Now, the lyrics in the song were very interesting to me because the part that he was saying was, and since we know that dreams are dead and life turns plans up on their head. And I swear I heard it repeat a second time and it said, and life turns plans up on their head. And that's when the collision happened. And as soon as that happened, like I said, I accepted with peace this is how I die. And there was full certainty that it was all okay, that nothing was bad about what was happening, that everything was going to be fine. But it was kind of funny because I tell this part to everybody. I remember the line in my head saying it as though I heard it from Rapunzel. Like Flynn Rider in the beginning of Tangled says, "This is the story of how I died. But don't worry, it's a funny story." And I heard it in his voice. I was like, this is the story of how I die. And as I started to ascend out of my body, I saw what they call the light. A lot of people have said they've seen the light. I didn't really believe that up until this point. I was very spiritual, but I didn't think I'd really like see a light in that way. And I did. And as I started ascending, I can't describe this being as looking a certain way. It felt more to be like a huge presence, something bigger than me, possibly the creator, but it was like a huge white orb of light that I felt myself kind of shifting towards. Actually, in your intro video, when it starts like this is the JeffMara podcast and you're going through all those like tunnels, that's kind of what it felt like. Like I was being pulled through a universal tunnel and going towards this light. And I remember I was so happy to be there. And as soon as I got like right there, it was like this anger had shifted over me that was like, this is not how your story ends. And I was shoved back onto earth and I woke up instantly spinning. My car was spinning out because I had totaled it. And I remember thinking the only thing I could think to myself was make sure your legs work, make sure you can walk. I have still to this day never figured out why I thought my legs didn't work. But all I remembered was you need to make sure you can walk, you need to make sure your legs work. So I jumped out of my car and my car just kept rolling until it hit a sidewalk. And I just didn't care about anything besides if I could walk in that moment. And it was really interesting because I feel like I shouldn't give this information away. So if you need to edit out, totally do it. But I was turning onto my own street. My neighborhood is zodiac signs. All of the street names are zodiac signs. And I lived on a street called Astral Drive, which was even more freaking interesting that I happened to go to the astral realm while having a near-death experience. But yeah, that was pretty much what happened to me on that day. I had called my mom because I was obviously on my own street. She came down. We made sure I was okay. The other person was okay. And yeah, I didn't take that as a way to like really influenced my life for a few years because I was about 18 at the time. But the more that I got into spirituality over the years and the more that I got into my spiritual practices, the more I've realized how that experience truly did shape me for me needing to fight harder to live instead of kind of disassociating into the astral realm at any given point to kind of use survival mode as my given state of being on a normal basis. It was like, not that spirit would ever be mad at you, because never are they mad at you, but it felt like my guides wanted me to understand what you're doing here on earth is like you're going in circles. You're not getting anywhere. I need you to fight harder. And they just shoved me back down like it is not your time.
Was knowing or learning that you have to fight harder, was that something that you heard from the being, or was that kind of like a download?
It's a download. It was something that I felt. It was an intense, intense knowing. I would call it claircognizance, and that's something I've always been connected to. But when I felt it, it was like you said, it was a download. It wasn't something I could hear clearly, but I did see that white orb of light that looked like I don't want to call it an angel or necessarily God, but it was definitely something up there. I don't know what it was exactly because I didn't see a form. I just saw a white orb of light.
When you left your body, did you happen to look back at the car and see it sitting there with your body in it?
I did not. And I have astral projected many times before and after this event, and I've been able to see myself separate from the like my physical body, but in this instant I was no longer here. Like I didn't see anything on earth. I only saw what I was headed towards.
Did you have any other communication with the being?
In that moment I didn't, and I do know that for a lot of people, like an NDE for them would be defined as like you having it said by a doctor that you have passed on. But for me, I had this overwhelming, deep knowing and peace that I had just died, and I was okay with that. But I will say, though, after the fact, that's when all of my spirituality and all of my abilities enhanced, and I was able to feel more connected to the other side after the fact. And I understood life a little bit easier because I knew that something was up there looking out for me.
So are you saying that all these abilities developed because of your experience?
I had them prior, but I have had new ones develop after my experience, the more that I deep dive into spirituality.
What's new?
So as of recently, well, actually, I'll start from the beginning. So, like, when my whole life, I've always been able to astral project. That's just been something that was a given since I was very little. But when I got a little bit older, I started picking up spirituality. The first thing I picked up was tarot. And this opened my whole perspective because I realized after never being wrong when I would read for anyone, whether it was someone I knew in person or someone across the country that I was on Zoom doing a reading with, I would never be wrong. And it just started to feel so clear to me that I have a connection to something bigger than us, something bigger than just this planet. And after I realized I could read tarot, I knew I could communicate with the other side. But as of recently, after going through a lot of shadow work and a lot of healing, I have actually been able to start doing mediumship. So I guess you can technically consider tarot mediumship because you are communicating with the other side. But I've had some of my coworkers have their passed on relatives come up to me and ask to speak to them. Scared the shit out of me at first because I'm used to like being able to perceive a being but not see a being. But I have been recently able to see and hear them talk to me and ask me to communicate with my coworkers for them. And I would be scared going up to them, but I'd be like, "Hey, did your dad pass away? Because he's talking to me right now." And they would be like shook to their core. And they're like, "Yeah, no, he did." And I've been able to help beings pass on that are stuck in limbo. It's been beautiful.
When you see the beings, like you saw your coworker's dad,
Mhm.
did he look like a ghost?
He looks more human, like, yeah. I feel like when I'm communicating with a being that is a spirit guide, they can sometimes look more angelic, or they can sometimes look even like humanoid type, but not quite human. But when it's somebody's ancestor that's stuck in limbo and needs help moving on, they tend to look more human. like they would here.
Does this happen to you spontaneously?
Yeah, I don't know how to invoke it. Like, I can ask somebody's guide, or not guide, I can ask somebody's ancestor to come in and help me talk to them, but it more so happens when they find me, that I can see them in the physical.
How do you think they find you?
I think it depends on my radius to the person that they want to talk to. So I started the job that I'm at currently, I want to say like 4 months ago. And this is when me actually seeing them in person happened. And I have two coworkers who have recently had their fathers pass on. And I did not know this about those two coworkers until their fathers came up to me. And this is when, wait, I'm sorry, what was your question? I got lost.
Does it happen to you spontaneously?
Spontaneously. Yeah. So when I got around these people, that's when I started being able to perceive these beings. But I think that the reason it happened more spontaneously is because in the past, I had a certain level of ego keeping me from being able to see past earthly, or what am I looking for? The right word. Maybe like the physical. Like, I would perceive things with a feeling, but I couldn't see it. I think I was like more afraid of the actual sight of what I would see. But I think the fact that I have been doing a lot of healing before starting this new job, and I finally have opened myself up to these experiences. Once I got around these people, the being knew that I was a healer who could help not only them pass on, but also the person be at peace, because they really needed this peace from their fathers, and their fathers were stuck in limbo and needed to pass on.
Let's take this coworker as an example. What did their father tell you to relay to them?
Yeah, so I'm gonna probably use my older coworker because her dad was more prominent about it. He came to me, and at first he scared the hell out of me, and I was like, whoa. And I just kind of looked at him, and he didn't say anything at first with words. At first it came through as a feeling, but I could physically see him standing there. And I felt that he needed help, and all I heard was unfinished business, but this came through as more of a download. And then I went to her. I almost said her name. I don't want to mention her name, but I went to her and I told her, hey, did your dad pass along? He's telling me he has unfinished business. And she starts bawling her eyes out. And she's like, you don't understand. During COVID is when he passed away, and the borders were shut because she lived in Barcelona prior. And she was like, the borders were shut. So I was not able to go back and say goodbye to him before he passed along. And I was like, okay, so we're definitely going to meet up and do a reading because he wants to talk. Now, during the reading, that's when he would just sit with me and communicate directly. And they would say like smaller sentences at a time rather than having like a full blown conversation. I would be using like my tools, whether it be my tarot cards or just my intuition, to perceive. And then I would hear direct words from this being, and he would choose to show up or walk or, not pass away, but like show up, disappear. And he'd say things like, tell her I'm sorry, or tell her she has permission. And with just those phrases as prompts, my intuition would follow with what the permission was for or what he was sorry about.
In what other ways did your life change after your NDE?
You know, I really don't feel like I let it impact me at first. I feel like I just saw it as a car accident, and I did feel that I had passed on, but I didn't really have many people in my life or a lot of experience in my life with spirituality. Like, I had grown up being pretty haunted, so I've had a lot of paranormal experiences with the other side, but when it came to light or healing beings or just the creator or any of that, I hadn't had much experience with it. So I didn't really think on it until I decided I needed to change my own life. And I think it always stuck in the back of my head that I was clearly pushed down with a force back into my body because they said they needed me to fight harder for my life. And that, I think that phrase, it did stick with me in a way because I knew that what I was doing wasn't getting me anywhere. I was going in circles, I was stuck in a loop, and I really felt like my life was I don't want to say like pointless because it wasn't, but I couldn't find a bigger purpose for why I was here or the whole point of being alive or any of that. I just couldn't connect to anything. And so when I would think back on how spirit would tell me, your story is not over, you're not done, I felt like I had a bigger purpose. So I will tell you that it affected me in the sense of knowing that there's more to life. So I had something more to live for. It gave me that motivation not to give up or not to just continue to sit with the mindset that life is cruel and it'll never be better. So I think having that experience shaped me in the sense of giving me something to fight for.
What is your purpose?
Well, that's an interesting question because I believe that the purpose of life is living. I believe that for every single being. I think that we are creators. We come down here with the ability to do whatever is going to make us happy. We're learning about our souls. And of course, no matter when you're born, there's going to be turmoil. It's going to be a tumultuous life at some point. But I think the purpose is to find purpose. Like it showed me in a very clear way that I didn't need to be doing something right or specific to be worthy of life. The whole point of me being worthy of life is that I'm here and I can do with this life whatever I want. As long as it's making me happy, I feel that I'm on the right track. And whenever I am tuned in or tapped into something that does make me happy, it reaffirms in my body and my soul through a download that this is what life is about. It's about the journey. It's about enjoying every part that you can while you're here. But if you're asking me directly what I feel, well, I feel like what most people would call a purpose is I think that I am here to help souls understand that there is more to life than what they see or can perceive. And I feel that when you don't have any connection to the spiritual at all, doesn't matter what your belief systems are, whether it be religion, whether it be spirituality, it doesn't matter. But when you don't have any balance with something bigger than yourself, you often wander with no direction, and that can be really depressing. And I think that my purpose would be to help lost souls find their way, both like physical souls, like people who are here now, and also the ones who are stuck in limbo, find their way to something bigger.
Can you give us an example of someone who was stuck in the astral and how you helped?
Yeah. So with my coworker that I was talking about earlier, I helped her dad pass on. So she had told me that well, she kind of shared it, but I stopped her because I was like, "Hold on, I'm gonna do a reading for you. Don't share too much of your life with me before we get into it." But she started sharing that she felt like growing up, there was a lot of control in her life, and that's where I stopped her. So when we went to do her reading, I heard like her dad expressing to me that the reason that he couldn't pass on and he was stuck in limbo was because he felt like he left his child. And I know a lot of people view children as your karma because they are extensions of you. So when you want to move on, but there's something unsettled or unfinished, a lot of the time having a child here that's still struggling because of an internal trauma that could have been placed there by your actions will come up. And this soul specifically did not want to move on without his daughter knowing that she had the permission that he never gave her to live her life. It was so important to him. He had felt like he had done everything else in his life without regret. But this specific thing he did not feel he could move on until we settled. And in the reading, what I do basically to help the soul pass on, I sat with my coworker. I grabbed her hands and I already had him present because he had been talking to me through the whole reading. And it was the last part of the reading was helping him pass on. So he was there and I grabbed her hands and I told her I wanted her to tell her dad, whether it be in her head or out loud. And she did say whatever she said in her head. Felt very peaceful within herself that he was there and that she can actually kind of experience signs from him now, where she felt like she wasn't seeing any beforehand.
Do you still not fear death?
I would be lying if I said there wasn't still a small fear of death, but I think that I've let go of it so tremendously that it's why I can now actually see and perceive these souls that are stuck in limbo, whereas before it was more of a feeling. I think the amount of information I've received from spirit guides, from ancestors, and from souls stuck in limbo, there's too much of a belief in my mind and in my soul that the other side is real to be so afraid of death. And also, when I did die, I wasn't scared. I was happy. I felt so much peace. I didn't even feel pain.
If you had a friend that was grieving over the loss of a loved one, what kind of advice would you give?
I think I would kind of express to them the same things that I've expressed to you through this video, just like expressing my experiences with the afterlife and trying to help them understand that ascension is not the end, that this person is still very much here, because even after they do move on to the other side, they are still here with us. There's a part of their soul that stays with, again, not to call karma in a bad way, but with their children, with their loved ones, with the people that knew them in this life. They stay here in part to help guide them through this journey. They're never really gone. And I think it really is up to like the person's perception on whether or not that's going to be comforting or not, because some people just don't believe, or they haven't had enough experience to make that feel, or for that to make them feel comfortable. But I do think that when I explain what I've been through to a lot of people, it does make them feel peace. There's been lots of sessions of just conversations I've had with people where we're both in tears because you can feel the energy helping them make peace with death.
Do you ever have contact with non-human entities like angels, guides, or even extraterrestrials?
So I've had more contact with, I guess I would call them evil beings than I have of light beings that are not of humanoid type, not by choice, but just being raised in a very scary environment. But when it comes to seeing like angels, I have felt this, and this is just a feeling, so I don't know. I have felt like I've seen angels in human form where I'm not even quite sure that was a real person, where the conversations that we had, they had come along at just the right time, at just the right point to say just the right thing, and I'd never see them again. And sure, it could have been a coincidence, but I feel like that's the closest I can say I've seen an angel. I have seen, though, humanoid type beings while being in sleep paralysis that did not feel evil or did not feel ominous. They felt more like they were trying to communicate a message. They look pretty human. They're very tall. They're kind of pale, like very white, not like skin color white, but like white beings. I don't know how to describe them because I've looked into like Pleiadians, I've looked into like different types of alien humanoid type beings, just trying to figure out maybe what I experienced. But when I experienced the sleep paralysis and saw the being, it kind of felt more like it was just trying to send a download for me rather than harm me or hurt me. But it was all through like telepathy. Like they didn't say anything to me like directly that I could hear. It just felt like I saw them and I could understand why they were there.
Do you feel like you now have the ability to control your sleep paralysis and go out and astral travel?
I do. I honestly have been astral projecting even before my NDE, and I didn't have control over it, which is why I wandered into so many terrifying realms. And I felt that things did follow me back into the physical, because the things that I would see over there, I would then see while I was wide awake walking past my bedroom door, and it would scare the hell out of me. So I've always been able to astral project, but I think around 19 years old, I purposely suppressed it by sleeping every night with the lights on and the TV on so that I would never fall into deep enough of a sleep to project. And after doing that for like maybe a year, I just stopped projecting. And I didn't get it back until around, I want to say like 22 years old, I started doing it again. Um, and I'm 26 now, so it's been about 4 years since I got it back. But I can control it a lot better now. I don't wander into terrifying territories, and should I become sleep paralyzed, I'm able to get out of it like instantly.
What's going on out there with these terrifying territories and these evil entities?
So I'm going to ask you a question first. Do you want a story of what I've experienced in the physical or experienced in the astral?
Both.
Okay. So I'll start with the astral because this one has been probably the most common since I was younger. Um, when I would fall asleep, it would always look normal. I would just be wandering through an area that I was recognizing, whether it was my friend's house, whether it was my house, whatever. And then all of a sudden, I would recognize I'm assuming you've seen it before. Have you seen Stranger Things?
Yes.
Okay, so the upside down is what these realms look like in my astral projection. I will be wandering through something that looks completely normal, and then all of a sudden it'll look the exact same, but everything is dark and dreary and ominous and scary. But it's the same building or the same bedroom, but everything has become dark. And so it looks to me like the upside down. And once I start to realize that, the people that I'm around, they're usually people that I know in real life or people that I've at least seen at some point. They start to have an energy about them where I realize that is not that person. I had wandered somewhere I did not need to be. And the second they realize that, I run because I know damn well they're about to chase me. And they do every time. And there's one experience that I remember so clearly. I had run back to my bed. I went into, well, first off, the house that I was at was a coworker's house. So I ran through the house, and as soon as I opened the door, it had become my house. So I ran up the stairs, ran to my bedroom, and this thing was chasing me all the way through. At first, it was just my coworker's face, but the way he was looking at me, I knew it was not him. So when he knew that I knew that it wasn't him, it chased me. And when I got into my bed trying to wake myself up in the real world, it did like this demonic face in my head. Like I saw this image of a demonic face screaming at me. And I then saw that exact entity walk past my bedroom door. Not right away, but I want to say it was like a couple weeks later. I had just come home from work. It was like 3 in the morning. Well, that's not true. It was probably like 1 in the morning. But I was in my room. I had on a ring light and I was about to take off my makeup. So I had gotten my hands like lathered up with lotion. I was about to take off all my makeup. And right before I put it on, I saw in my mirror, because my bedroom door was open behind me, I saw in my mirror a being with long black hair, a pale white face, and a veil over their face walk past the door. And I was like, Mom, because I was like, probably like, I want to say I was like 19 at the time. I started calling for everybody in the house and nobody responded. And past my bedroom door, there's two more bedrooms. So if somebody in the real world was walking past, they would have had to open a door. So I realized what I had just seen, not screamed, booted it into my mom's room, opened her door, and I was like, "Did you just walk past my door?" And she's like, "I'm clearly sleeping. What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Yep, cool." And like, again, just reaffirmed that whatever had followed me from my dream had become strong enough to manifest itself into the physical. And that was absolutely terrifying. Um, and I feel like I've had multiple experiences like recently where I've been seeing like shapeshifters or mimics pretending to be my mom, pretending to be my dog. And my husband will also see them at the same time. So I know it's not just me that's like perceiving this because he is seeing this in real time too.
Do you ever find yourself after astral projecting during sleep that you wake up in the middle of the night and your heart is pounding and you're breathing heavy, like as if you were really fighting in real life, even though your body was asleep?
Normally, only if I've been chased back. When I'm just astral projecting and I'm in like normal realms or experiencing normal things, I'm fine. But when I wander into darker places, I absolutely do feel like I was just fighting for my life. And I think a lot of people can attest to this. There's this overwhelming feeling that if you don't make it back to your body, something very bad will happen if you don't get there before something else gets there.
I guess most of the part I was curious about was that if you woke up and your heart was pounding, like as if you were outside sprinting, do you ever feel that?
Well, that's what I'm saying, only if I've been chased, but when
Mhm.
I'm just astral projecting and nothing bad has happened in my projection, then I'm usually just I feel normal when I come back to my body.
Do you ever dream of people that you've never met?
Yeah, I do. And honestly, I think it's interesting because I've done research on this. They say you're not supposed to be able to dream of a face that you've never seen in real life or that you've never met before, but I can absolutely do that. And I can also read time in my dreams or read words in my dreams. And they say you can't do that either, but I can.
Interesting. I'll have to try that. When you say time, you mean clocks?
Yeah, like if I were to look at my iPhone time right now, a lot of people say it's impossible to actually make out what time it is when you're reading in a dream, but I can see it very clearly.
What other paranormal things have happened to you in your life?
So I actually had an experience once where I was stuck in a time loop. And I feel like what I was explaining to be the upside down earlier, it was happening, but here in the real world. I was wide awake. I was with two other coworkers, and it happened, and all three of us could attest that we saw the same thing. So I knew I wasn't crazy or I wasn't making this up in my head. And it was absolutely insane.
When you say time loop, is that kind of like the movie Groundhog Day?
I've never seen it, but I do know what you're talking about. Yes, but I think it was a little bit more subtle because it was happening in spurts through the night. So I'll tell you the story. So we had all three gone back to this one coworker's house specifically because she told us that she was a little afraid to be at home alone with her boyfriend at this time. And I feel like it's kind of hard to tell this story without the background story, but I don't wanna talk for way too freaking long, but I've told this story on my TikTok, and it makes more sense if you understand what happened a few days prior to why she was scared and what actually was going on with him that got us caught in this time loop. So I'm gonna ask you, do you want me to, like, give you that background? Because I don't know how much time we have, I don't wanna talk too long.
We have lots of time.
Okay. So then I'm going to give it to you like this. So prior to us getting stuck in this time loop, I had done what I would consider a makeshift exorcism on one of my friends at work. And so basically, this is how this story goes. So we had been fine at our job for a long time. We all knew there was like an entity that worked in the building. This building was built probably 50 to 75 years prior, and we had a lot of ancient antique what is it called? Native American decor in
Mhm.
the barn. So the barn was connected to the restaurant. It wasn't like separate from it, but it was where we would hold banquets. So we felt that this entity that lived in the restaurant was fine. It was harmless. We would hear it calling our names, but it definitely lived in the barn. Now, all of a sudden, we get this one coworker that starts working with us. And we all notice he's a little bit off, but it is what it is, no big deal. But we would then find him in the barn, in the dark, talking to himself just in the pitch black dark. And this is where we believe that the entity lived to begin with. So after he starts doing this, we start feeling progressively more of an ominous energy in the restaurant. It's not just calling our names, we're feeling this chill, like, what is it, like air, like right next to us that when we're serving, or there was a time where we were able to see a flickering black shadow just like waft through the barn. And we'd never seen those things before he started talking to himself in the dark in there. So I'm not saying he invoked something, but it kind of felt that way. So we then, like, fast forward a few days, we had this new coworker start working with us. She goes through her server training. The day she is supposed to actually get on the floor by herself, she freezes. She comes to work super happy. She's totally fine. And I gave them names in the story. Okay, I'm gonna call her Catherine. So my friend Catherine, who was one of my coworkers, she was a server, but she was also a manager on duty. So this day she was managing. She had tables come up to her and say, "Hey, Kendall," again, fake name, had told us, or sorry, our server Kendall has not been back to the table in like an hour, and we ordered appetizers, they never came out, or hey, we haven't even gotten our drinks yet. So my coworker Catherine goes up to her and she's like, hey, Kendall, I'm just making sure everything's okay. And Kendall's just standing there typing in random numbers, like frozen on the POS, just can't even like, she's not here. She's literally gone. And she's just typing in these random numbers over and over again. And she's like, can you hear me? Like, Kendall, are you okay? And she looks at her and then turns back to what she was doing. So my friend Catherine gets scared, goes and gets our other manager, Kaylani. Kaylani comes over and she's like, hey, Kendall, your tables are telling us that they're not getting service. Is everything okay? Do you need to go home? And she just freezes and she looks at her and she goes, soup. I need soup. And then she turns back to what she's doing and just keeps typing random numbers. So they were like, yeah, let's call her husband. So they go call her husband to pick her up, tell her to go like sit down, finish her paperwork. They're going to have her go home. When they went to go look for her after calling her husband, they couldn't find her anywhere. And they finally did find her in the barn, in the dark, talking to a wall. So it was literally like, wait, what? So after that, um, Kendall goes home, and as Catherine is leaving that day, she walks out the restaurant, realizes she forgot her water bottle. So she comes back in, grabs her water bottle, and as she's leaving, this tree, and it's been there for years, there's no reason it would suddenly feel the urge to fall. This tree behind her goes, and she turns around to look at it and she's paralyzed. She can't move no matter how hard she wants to run. The tree falls over, crushes one of our coworkers' cars, and then it's like inches from crushing her. It's right in front of her feet. And she was absolutely like petrified, terrified, did not know what to do. So um basically, I'm trying to figure out if I even need to tell the story of the exorcism because I think I can skip that and get into the time loop. Um, so yeah, so that happened. She was terrified, felt like something was after her for knocking it out of its host body. And I have like screenshots of proof because this girl who had been I don't want to say possessed, but that's kind of how it felt. She messaged me on accident instead of messaging our manager and told me that she has proof that she went to the doctor, has zero memory of anything that happened, but knows for a fact that she was not on drugs or under the influence of anything. The doctor didn't know what was wrong. She was willing to bring in the paperwork and she sent me that message. So I had it. And she's like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to send that to you. Um, so this was prior, I want to say like 3 days before I go into the restaurant and do a tarot reading for one of my coworkers in the barn. And I'm going to skip the exorcism story right now because I want to talk about the time loop. But the exorcism story happened like, I want to say like a week before this time loop. So after that story, we end up going back to Catherine's house. So when the time loop begins, this is me, Catherine, and Jocelyn. So we go back to Catherine's house. And as we get there, everything's normal at first, and we decide that we want to go get Dutch Bros. Jocelyn had brought her ex-wife with her to the house and had brought her baby, who was about a month old, with her to the house. So we left behind Catherine's boyfriend, Jocelyn's ex-wife, and baby. And the three of us left to go get Dutch Bros. If anyone's not from California, Dutch Bros is a coffee place. So we go to get Dutch Bros. The closest one that's still open around like 10:30 p.m. at this point was 30 minutes from where we were. So we start driving there. And as we are pulling into the drive-through to get our coffee, we get a call from Catherine's boyfriend. And he is absolutely furious. And he's like, you guys are lying about where you said you were. You need to hurry up and get back here right now. Like, you need to get this damn baby, blah, blah. So we're like, okay, okay, okay. So we turn around. So we're on our way back. And mind you, the reason we went to Catherine's house in the first place was because she was afraid to be around her boyfriend because a few days prior, she had found him staring at her while she was asleep on the couch with something behind his back. And when she asked him what was behind his back, he did not respond, like he was in a trance, and he just walked back up the stairs, but had whatever was hidden behind his back continued to be hidden. So she never knew what he was planning, but did not want to be alone with him. So fast forward back to the drive-through. So we're leaving the drive-through, and we all are native to Sacramento. We know this area like the back of our hands. But as we're driving back, all of a sudden, it starts to get kind of how I described in my projections, like the upside down. Everything was dreary. everything was dark and everything looked really scary out of nowhere. And we also recognized we were the only car on the freeway. And that's just not common in Sacramento at like 10:50 p.m. Like we're not going to be the only car on the entire freeway, but nobody was around us. And this is the weird part was we all knew where we were going. It was a straightaway, but none of us recognized where we were at. We were genuinely confused. I checked my GPS. My phone had no signal. Neither did Catherine's and neither did Jocelyn's. So we're kind of scared, but the only choice we have is to go straight. I'm running out of gas at this point. So we're going straight, hoping that something is going to change. And I shit you not, the road glitches in front of our eyes. We see the road glitch back to normal. It still looks dark and dreary, but we now know where we're at. So we're like, okay, weird, but okay. We keep driving. So when we get close enough to Catherine's house, there are 3 exits that would not stop repeating themselves no matter how fast we drove past. So um it was supposed to be Consumnes River, Sheldon Boulevard, Laguna. And Laguna was the exit we needed to get off on. But as we're driving, we keep seeing Sheldon Boulevard, or sorry, Consumnes River, Sheldon Boulevard, then Consumnes River, then Sheldon Boulevard, then Consumnes River, then Sheldon Boulevard. So we're getting very confused at this point. And I thought I was going crazy. And so finally, Catherine was like, didn't we pass this exit like 3 times? And I was like, okay, so I'm not crazy. You saw that too? And Jocelyn's like, no, I definitely saw it too. Laguna should be next. And I was like, right. Okay, so we pull up to the next one, and again, it's Consumnes. So we're like, what the fuck? We all start screaming. None of us know what to do. We still have no signal on our phones, and we're all terrified. Jocelyn is like, I don't think I'm ever going to see my baby again. I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm like, guys, I have a bigger problem. I have 6 miles till empty. We are going to run out of gas. So whatever the next exit is, I'm getting off on it. So I went to go get off on the next exit, fully expecting it to be Sheldon Boulevard. And for some reason, it was P Street. P Street was probably 30 minutes in the other direction. There was just no possible way that was the next exit. I would have had to have gotten off of the freeway, turned around for like 30 minutes. It just wasn't possible. So I got off on that exit. And as I get off on the exit, it says we're on Arden Way. Now, anyone who's from Sacramento also knows that's like 15 minutes away from the P Street exit. So none of this is making sense. So we're just like lost in an upside down map of Sacramento. And we pull into a gas station. I was actually able to get gas, luckily. But I was like, okay, I don't know what to do because no matter where I go, we can't get anywhere. And when we do get somewhere, it's not where we're supposed to be. So we just kind of sat there for a second and I was like, okay, I'm going to give it a try because we were next to Arden Mall. So I was like, I think I can go up and turn around and get on the freeway. Let's just see what happens. So we're driving straight and we would see like this building and then the mall. Like the mall was in the distance and there was like 2 buildings in front of the mall. So as we would start to drive past these buildings, they would just keep repeating. We would never make it to the mall. And no matter how hard we tried, it just kept repeating itself. What is that dumb movie called? It was like a sci-fi movie where like they were trapped in this neighborhood and no matter like where they went, they would just see the same exact circle over again. It wasn't, I don't know what it was called, but it reminded me of that. Um, but no matter how hard we tried, we could not get out of this situation. So we all just kind of give up for a second. I park and I'm like, I don't know what to do. So we're sat there for what feels like maybe 15 minutes, but the time was weird because it was like around in real time, I want to say it was around like probably 11:30, maybe almost 12. I don't know, but it was probably around there. And I told them, I don't know what's going to happen, but I guarantee you that we get back to your house at 4:44 a.m. And she was like, I hope we get back at all. So we finally slowly start driving and we're able to get somewhere. And I was like, oh my God, it's working. So my GPS and my phone comes back on and so do theirs. Now, with mine, it says it should take us an hour to get home. Realistically, knowing Sacramento, it should have taken us probably like maybe 15 minutes from where we were at. Catherine's phone said it was going to take us 6 minutes, and Jocelyn's phone would not give her an ETA. So as we are getting back to like almost being where we need to be, the time glitches. It was supposed to be around 12, but it then said that it was 4:42 in the morning. And I was like, okay. So we pull up to the house at 4:43. We walk inside and Catherine goes, I don't want to be here alone. I'm going to just go pack a bag because at this point, Jocelyn's ex-wife was waiting for her outside in the car with the baby, and Catherine's boyfriend had gone upstairs to go to bed. So we went inside and Jocelyn and I were waiting in the kitchen. Catherine goes upstairs to pack a bag. Now we were staring at the oven. It said 4:43. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. I said that wrong. It said 4:42 because we both simultaneously watched the time change from 4:42 to 4:44. We watched it skip 4:43. So we were like, hold on, you saw that too? And as soon as we both noticed that it had skipped 4:43, we heard Catherine run down the stairs and she's like, I don't need anything. Let's just go. Let's get out of here. I don't want to be here. Let's go. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, what's wrong? And she's like, that's not him. I don't know what it is, but it's not him. And I was like, are you sure? And she's like, yep, I don't even want to stay to figure it out. Let's go. And I was like, but your kids are here. And she's like, I don't think he'll do anything to the kids. And I'm like, so you trust that that is not him and his body, but you don't think he'll hurt your kids? And she's like, look, I don't know. I just can't be here. I was like, oh, okay, it's not my kids. Like, but we left. And the weird thing was Jocelyn's ex-wife never mentioned it to her, even though they were so mad at us. And Catherine's boyfriend never mentioned it to her after that again. Now, what we believe in our theory is that we were being protected from getting back to the house because there was a hole punched in the wall when we got back there. And we believe that we were being protected from getting back to the house from something bigger than us. And also the fact that he had stared at her and there was just like this trance that he was in and he was holding something behind his back. This all started happening after this one coworker had started working with us and started invoking something in the barn. So we all feel like it leans back towards him because every single time we would be in a group of 3 girls, something supernatural, paranormal, ominous would happen. And it always felt like he was somehow involved in some way, shape, or form. And even when it came to being like at her house alone, if we'd be talking about it on the phone, her lights would burn out. Or if we were like on FaceTime talking about it, she said somebody broke into her backyard live while we were talking, but when they went out, there was nobody there. Like it always felt like whatever he had invoked, it was after us. And we think the time loop was intentionally to keep us away from the house at that given moment.
Who do you think was protecting you?
I feel like it had to have been our guides. Like Catherine's mother passed away when she was very young. So I definitely feel like her mother was a guide who was around and who was watching over us. Um, I also think that it was just in general like spirit guides that we have, our ancestors, because this was very much when I was in the beginning of my journey and I had been calling in my guides on a daily basis for protection to be around. And I feel like whatever was protecting us, it was a bigger power. I think it had to have at least been some of our ancestors that were looking out for us, like my grandmother, Catherine's mother. But I feel like there was something else too that just felt supernatural in a way that wasn't human. It felt like for it to shift the reality that we were in, it couldn't just be a passed on human being. It had to have been something bigger because it strategically kept us, no matter how hard we tried, from getting back to that house.
Did this happen before or after your NDE?
This happened after, years after.
Okay. Well, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
Absolutely. This is actually what I do for a living.
What's the best way to contact you?
I think the easiest way to contact me would be if you go to my TikTok. It is on, I think I can leave a link down below in the description with you, but I also will just tell everyone what it is. It's just my full name, Jasmine Cheyenne Rose. I do have a link tree connected in my TikTok where you can book with me, whether you're looking for shadow work, whether you're looking for guidance and you don't even know where to start, or whether you just want a tarot reading. I have multiple options. So if you don't know where to start, I have a consultation that you can book with me so we can talk about it before you pick a reading.
What's shadow work?
Shadow work is healing the ego side. It's where we find the rooted belief systems that keep you from getting to where you want to be in life, whether it's in love, career, finances, relationships. There's always rooted belief systems that we believe about ourselves that we continue to believe that bring it into our reality continuously. And shadow work is where we get to the root of it. I do different methods. I do um, parts work where I'll have your intuition and your ego talk to each other, or I use the completion method, which is like not full hypnosis, but it's like more so like a guided meditation, but slightly like a hypnosis, where you are guided to listen to me to pull you back to a memory where you have to re-feel what you felt in that moment and tried to reject because it's feeling that pain that's going to heal that pain. It's similar to, I don't know if I'm going to say this right. I think it's EDMR therapy, where you have to feel the pain in your body to release it because pain is stuck to you like muscle memory. It's similar to that.
Do you have anything else that you're working on that you want people to know about?
Ooh, actually, yes. So rather than doing these one-on-one sessions, I have enjoyed them, but they are extremely draining to do on a consistent basis. I am working on a series, rather than having you book shadow work with me, where you will learn by, I don't know how much I'm gonna make it right now, but it's gonna be on TikTok, where you can just purchase the whole series and you'll have it forever, where you can kind of teach yourself through the shadow work. I explain the basics behind the psychology of why this works, how humans perceive life through their ego lens versus through their intuition. And I then teach you multiple different methods on how to sit with the pain to release the pain.
Before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
I would love to say that this is not all that there is to the world. The physical life, this isn't all that there is. And even after passing away, it is so beautiful how life continues after death. And if you are somebody who's afraid of dying or afraid of loss or is scarred by losing somebody, I want you to know that they're still here with you. I want you to know that they still walk with you, they guide you, and they love you. And after moving on from this realm, there is nothing but bliss and beauty. There is something so peaceful about being on the other side that, though I get why you worry, you needn't worry. It is so beautiful on the other side.
Jasmine, thank you for your message and thank you for being my guest.
Absolutely. And I thank you for having me here, Jeff. It's been fun.
It sure has. Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.